The city awoke with a vibrant hum, its streets pulsing with the relentless energy of the early morning rush. Amidst this urban symphony, nestled between the shadows of towering skyscrapers, lay a modest apartment building, its brick facade whispering tales of years gone by. On the fifth floor, through a window adorned with a kaleidoscope of plant life, the first rays of sunlight spilled into a cozy living space, casting a warm glow over a collage of photographs and souvenirs that chronicled the adventures of Sarah and Mike. Sarah, with her hair tousled from sleep, sat at a cluttered desk that bore the marks of her creative battles. Scattered sketches, vibrant color palettes, and the soft glow of a computer screen that never seemed to rest. Her eyes, framed by the faintest hint of exhaustion, danced across the digital canvas before her, a testament to her unwavering commitment to her craft. Every stroke, every shade was a piece of her soul, meticulously woven into the fabric of her latest project. Across the room, the kitchen came alive with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the gentle clatter of cookware. Mike, apron-clad and humming a tune only he knew, moved with the grace of a conductor orchestrating a symphony of flavors. The kitchen was his sanctuary, a place where time stood still, and every dish was a love letter penned with the utmost care and affection. Their morning unfolded in a delicate ballet of routine and silence, a wordless communication honed over 5 years of shared dreams and whispered secrets. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary day lay an undercurrent of anticipation and forgotten promises. As Sarah's fingers paused above the keyboard, a fleeting thought brushed against the edge of her consciousness, only to be swept away by the tide of deadlines that demanded her attention. Mike cast a glance towards the clock, a flicker of disappointment clouding his features before he masked it with a practiced smile, turning his focus back to the meal he was preparing with more love than ever. "Breakfast is almost ready," Mike called out, his voice a warm embrace in the cool morning air. Sarah, momentarily pulled from her digital world, offered a grateful smile. "Just 5 more minutes," she replied, her voice a melody of stress and dedication. "This project is consuming me." As they navigated the dance of their morning routine, the significance of the day hung unacknowledged between them, an invisible thread fraying with each passing moment. The apartment, a mosaic of their life together, stood as a silent witness to the love that had flourished within its walls, now threatened by the shadows of neglect and forgotten anniversaries. As the city outside continued its relentless march into the day, the apartment on the 5th floor hummed with a quieter, more personal rhythm. The sun, climbing higher, spilled its light across the rooms, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. Inside, the air was filled with the comforting aroma of breakfast, a silent testament to Mike's efforts in the kitchen. Mike moved with a quiet efficiency, his hands deftly flipping pancakes on the stovetop, each one landing with a satisfying sizzle. The counter was a palette of culinary preparation. Slices of fresh fruit, a jar of homemade jam, and the soft glow of candlelight intended to transform a simple meal into an act of celebration. Today was no ordinary day, or so it was meant to be. It was their 5th anniversary, a milestone he had hoped would not go unnoticed. Across the apartment, Sarah was ensconced in her own world. The soft clicks of her keyboard punctuated the morning air, a staccato accompaniment to Mike's culinary symphony. Her focus was absolute, the project deadline looming like a specter over her consciousness. The importance of the day had slipped through the cracks of her overloaded memory, buried under the weight of work commitments. The disconnect between them grew as the morning wore on, an invisible chasm that widened with every unchecked moment. Mike set the table with care, placing 2 plates opposite each other with the intention of creating a moment of connection, a bridge over the growing gap. He glanced at the clock, his anticipation tinged with a growing sense of unease. "Breakfast's ready," Mike called out, his voice laced with a hopeful note that belied his inner turmoil. He stood at the doorway, observing Sarah, who was still deeply entrenched in her work. "Just a minute," Sarah responded without looking up, her voice automatic. The minutes stretched into several, each passing second a weight added to Mike's shoulders. Finally, Sarah emerged, her gaze still distant, locked in the aftermath of her mental battles. She took her seat, her eyes briefly scanning the table, a flicker of confusion passing through her expression before being quickly masked by a polite smile. "This looks amazing, Mike. You really didn't have to go through all this trouble," she said, her voice soft, unaware of the significance of her words. Mike's smile was strained, the effort of his preparations hanging between them unacknowledged. "I wanted to. It's a special day, after all," he hinted, watching her closely. Sarah's smile faltered, a crease forming between her brows as she searched his face for clues. The moment stretched, a puzzle piece missing in her understanding. As they began to eat, the conversation flowed around trivialities. The surface of their relationship seemingly smooth, but beneath it, the currents of disconnect and forgotten promises swirled. Mike's attempts to steer the conversation towards the significance of the day were met with distracted nods and half-responses from Sarah, her mind elsewhere. The meal concluded with an unspoken tension, the joy of the occasion lost in translation. Mike cleared the table, his movements slower, each dish a reminder of the gap that had formed between them. Sarah, meanwhile, retreated back to her work, the forgotten anniversary a shadow that had yet to reveal itself. The clock ticked on, indifferent to the unfolding drama, within the cozy confines of the apartment. As the city buzzed with the energy of mid-morning, Sarah sat ensconced in her world of colors and designs, her concentration unyielding. It was in this bubble of focused creativity that a chime from her computer gently intruded, a reminder set long ago now blinking insistently on the screen. With a sigh, Sarah leaned back, her eyes catching the reminder. Anniversary, it read, simple yet loaded with the weight of forgotten promises. A wave of realization washed over her, the color draining from her face as the significance of the day dawned on her. Today was their 5th anniversary, a milestone she had inadvertently overlooked. Panic knitted her brows as she glanced at the time, her mind racing to salvage what remained of the day. Meanwhile, Mike busied himself in the living room, tidying up with a heaviness in his steps. His thoughts were a tangled mess of disappointment and understanding, wrestling with the silence that had greeted his morning efforts. The lack of acknowledgement from Sarah had stung more than he'd anticipated, each moment of neglect a tiny, sharp jab to his heart. The silence between them was broken when Sarah emerged from her workspace, her steps hesitant as she approached Mike. I just saw the reminder, she began, her voice laced with regret. I can't believe I forgot. I'm so sorry, Mike. Mike's reaction was a mixture of relief and residual hurt. I was hoping you'd remember, he admitted, allowing his vulnerability to show. I wanted today to be special for us. His gaze drifted to the remnants of the morning's preparations, the unspoken effort now a ghost of the day's intentions. Sarah's heart sank as she followed his gaze, the pieces clicking into place. The breakfast, the candles, the effort he'd made. I've been so wrapped up in my project, I'm truly sorry, Mike. You deserve better than this, she said, the guilt in her voice mirroring the ache in her chest. They stood in a moment of shared sorrow, the air around them thick with unmet expectations and the bitter taste of oversight. It was a crossroads of sorts, a testament to the challenges of balancing personal and professional lives, of taking for granted the very foundation upon which their relationship was built. Let's not let the rest of the day go to waste, Sarah suggested, a spark of resolve lighting her eyes. I may have forgotten to start it right, but I want to make it up to you, to us. Mike looked at her, the hurt in his eyes slowly giving way to a cautious hope. I'd like that, he said, a soft smile touching his lips. But let's really talk about how we've been feeling. I think we've both been holding back. And so they agreed to set aside the day's disappointments and work towards mending the rift that had silently grown between them. It was a decision born from love and the understanding that no relationship is immune to the pitfalls of neglect and the hustle of daily life. The atmosphere in the apartment, once filled with the promise of reconciliation, began to shift as the day wore on. Sunlight waned, casting longer shadows across the walls, mirroring the growing tension between Sarah and Mike. They had cleared the air of the morning's misunderstandings, but the deeper currents of neglect and unspoken grievances began to surface. Sarah, her eyes weary from the emotional toll of the day, started the conversation with a tentative voice. Mike, I know I've been distant, consumed by work, but I want us to find our way back to each other. Her hands fidgeted with the edge of the tablecloth, a physical manifestation of her internal unease. Mike, who had been hopeful at the prospect of reconnecting, felt a pang of frustration. I understand that work is important, Sarah, but so are we. It feels like we're always put on hold. The words, heavier than he intended, hung in the air, a palpable reminder of the distance that had crept into their relationship. The room fell silent, the tension thickening. Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting Mike's. In them, she saw not just frustration, but a deep-seated hurt. You're right, she admitted, her voice a mere whisper. I've let the pressure of deadlines overshadow what truly matters. But Mike, do you think we've lost our way? Mike's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. Sometimes I do. It's like we're living parallel lives, intersecting only in the most superficial ways. He paused, collecting his thoughts. Remember how we used to make time for each other, no matter how busy we were? Sarah nodded, memories of their early days flooding back. Spontaneous dinners, late-night walks, the effortless laughter that used to fill their home. I miss us, she confessed, her voice cracking with emotion. The acknowledgement of their shared longing cracked open a door to the past, allowing glimpses of happier times to seep through the present gloom. but it also laid bare the work required to mend the frayed edges of their bond. We need more than just apologies, Sarah. We need action. We need to make each other a priority again, Mike said, his tone infused with a mix of hope and desperation. Sarah reached across the table, her fingers brushing against Mike's. I want that too. Let's start now. Let's make a plan to reconnect, to rediscover the joy we found in each other's company. The conversation shifted, slowly moving from expressions of regret to constructive plans. They talked about setting aside time for weekly dates, about engaging in new activities together, and about the importance of daily check-ins, no matter how brief. As night fell, enveloping the city in a blanket of stars, Sarah and Mike found themselves on their balcony, wrapped in a shared silence that was no longer oppressive but hopeful. The city lights twinkled below, a reflection of the tentative sparks rekindling in their relationship. As the night wrapped the city in its quiet embrace, Sarah and Mike found themselves in separate corners of their shared space, each lost in thought. The balcony conversation had ended with a hopeful agreement, but the gravity of their situation lingered, prompting a deeper introspection. Sarah retreated to their bedroom, a sanctuary filled with soft pillows and the subtle scent of lavender. She perched on the edge of the bed, her gaze fixed on a framed photograph on the dresser. It captured a moment of laughter, their faces alight with joy on a sun-drenched beach. The memory felt distant now, a reminder of what they had and what they were fighting to reclaim. How did we get here? She whispered to the silent room, thinking back to the memories they have shared. Meanwhile, Mike found solace on the couch, the dim light from the street lamps outside casting long shadows across the living room. He held a guitar in his lap, an instrument he once played daily for Sarah's amusement. Strumming absent-mindedly, he contemplated their journey, recognizing his own role in the drift that had taken them far from the shore of their once strong connection. The strings vibrated with a melancholy tune echoing his thoughts. The night deepened, and Sarah's reflection turned inward. She acknowledged the relentless pursuit of her career had consumed not just her time, but also her energy, leaving little for the person who mattered most. She realized that love, like a delicate flower, needed nurturing to bloom, and she had neglected their garden for far too long. Across the apartment, Mike's music slowed to a halt. He understood that while he had always been physically present, he had often been emotionally distant, retreating into silence rather than sharing his frustrations and desires. The guitar, once a source of connection, had become a barrier of unspoken words between them. As dawn approached, bringing with it the promise of a new day, Sarah rose from the bed, a resolve firming within her. She drafted a plan in her mind, a series of small but significant gestures to show Mike she was committed to bridging the gap between them. It was time to tend to their neglected garden, to water it with attention and care. Simultaneously, Mike set the guitar aside, his decision clear. He would begin by reopening channels of communication, sharing his daily experiences and actively seeking out Sarah's thoughts and feelings. He understood now that intimacy was built on the small shares of everyday life, and he was ready to invest in those moments. As the first light of morning filtered through the curtains, Sarah and Mike converged in the kitchen, their overnight reflections a silent undercurrent to their movements. The air was charged with a cautious optimism, a mutual understanding that while the road ahead was uncertain, they were willing to walk it together. Over cups of freshly brewed coffee, they shared their night's revelations without words, their eyes communicating a depth of emotion that had been missing for too long. It was a moment of unspoken agreement, a reaffirmation of their commitment to each other, and the love that had once been effortless. The soft hues of dawn painted the city in a light that promised new beginnings. Sarah and Mike, having shared a silent coffee in the kitchen, moved to the living room, where the remnants of last night's reflections still lingered in the air. They sat opposite each other, the space between them filled with years of memories, misunderstandings, and now, a fragile hope. Sarah broke the silence first, her voice barely above a whisper. Mike, I've been thinking about us, about everything we've shared and everything we've been through. I don't want to lose us. Her eyes, earnest and filled with vulnerability, sought his, searching for a sign of forgiveness. Mike took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. I felt lost, Sarah, adrift in a sea of silence and routine. But I realize now part of that was on me. I stopped communicating, stopped sharing. I want to find our way back to each other. His words, honest and raw, hung in the air, a testament to his commitment. The morning light began to fill the room, casting gentle shadows that seemed to soften the edges of their past conflicts. I miss us, Mike. The way we used to talk about everything, how we used to laugh. I miss how connected we felt, Sarah said, her voice strengthening with each word, as if speaking them brought her closer to those cherished memories. Mike nodded, his own heart aching with the longing for what they had lost. I miss that too. I miss us being the best part of each other's day. But I think we can get that back, Sarah. We just have to be willing to work for it, to really listen to each other. A silence settled between them, not awkward but reflective, as they both considered the weight of their words. It was Sarah who reached across the divide first, her hand extending towards Mike's. I'm willing to work for it, Mike. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Mike's hand met hers, their fingers intertwining in a physical manifestation of their emotional reconnection. Me too, Sarah. We've built too much together to let it slip away. Let's start anew, right here, right now. They spoke then of practical steps, of dedicated date nights, of setting aside time each day to really talk, to share the small details of their lives that had once kept them so intimately connected. They discussed the importance of being present, of actively listening, and of expressing appreciation for each other, not just in grand gestures, but in the everyday moments. The conversation flowed more freely now, laughter mingling with tears as they reminisced about their past and dreamed aloud about their future. It was as if the act of opening up, of making themselves vulnerable to each other, had reignited a spark that had been smothered by the mundanity of daily life. The city beneath them stirred to life as Sarah and Mike watched the sun ascend, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. This moment, shared in silent companionship, symbolized the dawn of a new scene in their lives. The air around them was cool and crisp, a refreshing contrast to the warmth of their intertwined fingers. Turning to face each other, the soft morning light accentuating the newfound determination in their eyes, Sarah took a deep breath. Let's make a promise right here to not let the noise of the world drown out the melody of our hearts, she said, her voice steady and sure. Mike squeezed her hand in response, his smile gentle yet brimming with resolve. And let's vow to always find our way back to this place, to each other, no matter how far we may drift, he added, the warmth in his voice wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. They spent the morning in the park, a place that had witnessed the highs and lows of their relationship. Walking hand in hand, they revisited old haunts and discovered new ones, each step a testament to their commitment to rebuild and renew. The laughter that had once defined their relationship flowed more freely now, a melody rediscovered. Sitting on a bench under the shade of an ancient oak, they planned a belated anniversary celebration. It was to be simple yet meaningful, a quiet dinner at home with their favorite dishes and a playlist of songs that charted the history of their love. This time, the focus would be on them, on savoring the moment and each other's company. The day passed in a blur of shared smiles and whispered secrets, a tangible reminder of the joy that comes from truly connecting with one another. As they prepared dinner together that evening, the kitchen became a dance floor, their movements synchronized in a rhythm perfected by years of companionship. Over dinner, they toasted to the future, to the challenges they would face, and the victories they would celebrate. To us, Sarah said, raising her glass, her eyes sparkling with emotion. To us and to the journey ahead, Mike echoed, clinking his glass against hers, the sound a clear bell of hope and renewal. As they settled into the living room, the soft glow of candles casting shadows that danced along the walls, they shared their dreams for the future. It was a conversation filled with possibilities, with plans for travel, for personal growth, and for deepening the bond that had been so sorely tested. The night drew to a close with Sarah resting her head on Mike's shoulder, the strains of their favorite song filling the air. In this moment, there was no room for doubt or fear, only the deep, abiding certainty that they were meant to walk this path together.